From the center of the universe, now in its 7th season covering your 19-time Grey Cup champion Toronto Argonauts, it's the X's and Argos podcast with Argos color analyst Ben Grant and Coach JB.
Welcome to the X's and Argos Postgame Reaction Podcast, brought to you by Something in the Water Brewing. Ben Grant joined as always by JB as the Toronto Argonauts fall to the Hamilton Tiger Cats 51-38 here at BMO Field. Here are the radio replays from tonight's broadcast with Mike Hogan on the call on TSN 1050.
First down at the 34-yard line, left hash mark, 3 receivers outside him to the left, play action. Actually, they do hand it off on the inside. It's Mitchell again. He's going to get inside the 20, inside the 15, powers his way inside the 5. They're going to mark him out at the 3-yard line. That's a gain of 31 yards. There's the snap. They're going to give it to Brown around the end of the outside, falling forward, touchdown! Kevin Brown to the end zone. The Argos convert on their first drive of the game. It's a touchdown for the Double Blue. So the Argonauts will get their first possession of the second half with 8 minutes remaining in quarter 3.
This would be a great time for Janarion Grant to bring one back and bring a bit of life back into this crowd too.
They'll stand back at their own 13-yard line. He's back there with Kevin Brown. Legio will put it up. Kicks it to Brown, who will catch it at about the 10-yard line. Far numbers right on the number 10. 15-20 coming to the middle of the field. He flips it to Janarion Grant, who's got the sideline. 25-30, 35-40. He beats his man. He could go. 55. See ya! No flags. Janarion Grant is back, baby. And the Argos are in the end zone. Coaxey outside Daniels on the near side. Arbuckle's looking the other way, under pressure, rolling to the right, rolling, throwing across his body for the touchdown. Devontae Coaxey has the major, and the Argos chipping away. They're not dead yet. Back to pass, Arbuckle throws, touchdown. And appropriately, it's Kevin Mitchell, who has had a nice night tonight. And hallelujah, the Argos finally have a 100-yard receiver this year. He had 98. That touchdown is going to put him over to 103. Arbuckle looks around, 3 receivers to the left, and they will run the football and get the touchdown. Kalen LeBourne, in his first game as an Argo, scores the touchdown, and the Argos aren't going away yet. It is 44-32. May have Chad Kelly back. Although tonight, Nick Arbuckle, 27 of 38 for 339 yards, a couple of touchdowns, and 1 pick, which may be the turning point in this game, as Mitchell will now drop back, let the clock tick down inside 20 seconds, so now he can just let it run out. So now the Ticats are going to let it run down. Bo Levi Mitchell's going to take one more knee. And the Ticats are going to head back down the QEW with a 51-38 victory. 89 points tonight, with only 37 of them coming in the first half. It was just a crazy second half, and they are shaking hands and exchanging hugs. I haven't seen any punches thrown yet, so that's a good thing.
We will have all of the game broken down for you, analyzed, and maybe a little bit of therapy if you need it as an Argo fan listening to this after what was a pretty rough night at BMO Field. But before we get into any of that, I want to talk about Something in the Water Brewing. JB, you and I were there today. It is such a great atmosphere, especially on a nice day like today, where you've got the air conditioned inside, you've got the bright sunny patio outside, you've got award-winning beer to choose from. I myself went with a hop water. I can't have beer before I go on the broadcast for good reasons, but they've got that hop water there for me, which is a perfect solution for you if you're a designated driver or just want to try something different. It's fantastic as well. But I highly recommend their award-winning beer too, including Longboat Pale Ale, the beer that is made for fans of the Double Blue. It's always great to get down there. It's great to interact with listeners, to hear what is on your mind. We always get podcast ideas from you, and we love hearing what you have to say about the Toronto Argonauts and getting into some of those discussions. And speaking of that, let's do that right now, JB. Maybe first thoughts. What is your initial thought here, having seen the Toronto Argonauts fall 51-38?
Well, I mean, they're not a very good football team. They may be a good one in the future, but this current iteration is not good at football.
There's just too many holes. There's too many guys missing. It was the good thing about this week was that you had far less turnover than last week. And I think that did show in some ways. Like, this is the first game all season where the offensive line has been the same in back-to-back games, same guys in same places. And so that did show. I thought the pass protection was much better than it has been. I thought the run blocking was significantly better than it has been. And so you saw that sign. But at the end of the day, last week's lineup was missing 8 starters, and then with Mayan Williams sidelined and Kalen LeBourne starting and said, you're now missing 9 starters on a team, or a sport rather, where you've got 24 overall starters. Missing 9 of those guys it's just simply too many to overcome. Now, does any of that matter, the way Bo Levi Mitchell played tonight? I'm not sure. I don't know. I'm trying to think of the last time I saw a quarterback this hot in a game, and it might have been the Dane Evans second half from the East Final back in 2021. I'm not sure I've seen another performance like this.
Action.
Maybe somewhere in there, but I don't know like this though. Bo Levi Mitchell, 19 of 24, 332, 5 touchdowns, 3 of them to Kenny Lawler, who had 207 yards receiving, was just unstoppable today. But it's not like any of these were on bust. That's what's so impressive about it. And that's why I think, Bo Levi Mitchell played so well tonight, is that he wasn't taking advantage of missed assignments where Kenny Lawler was running free down the sideline and someone forgot to go with him. He was in tight coverage. There was tight coverage across the board tonight, and yet the Ticats put up 51 points. Like, how do you fix that?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it is very frustrating to watch because the defensive backs are in the right position. A couple of times they weren't really in phase, but I mean, they're very close, but they just cannot win the 50-50 balls. Like, the touchdowns are scored like over their outstretched fingers. That point of contact defensive back moment is just not very good. They're just not able to, they're last in pass breakups. They're just not able to defend effectively in one-on-one deep route plays. It is very difficult. I grant you that. It is a very difficult skill. But, as a professional football team, you just have to be able to defend better. Like, you just have to be able to knock that ball down when you are, essentially in phase and you're going down the field with the guy and it's a 50-50 ball. You shouldn't lose 90% of your 50-50 balls. Like, that's just bad math.
But they're from guys that don't typically. Like last year, Reggie Franklin, I think, led the league in knockdowns. And here he just couldn't seem to get his hand on the football. Got it close, but Lawler found a way to bring it in. And Tavares McFadden, I thought he had a really good shot at 3 interceptions today, one of which could have been a pick 6. And he didn't come away with any of those 3. And he's a guy who had a ton of interceptions at Florida State. So many, in fact, as a sophomore, that he was voted the best defensive back in all NCAA football because he was so good at picking off the opposition and just couldn't quite grasp any of those today. Again, in perfect position, couldn't make the catch. Franklin, in perfect position, couldn't tip the ball away. Happened to McFadden as well on one of those touchdowns. And then that one at the end to Smith, which was like perfectly between 2 defenders. Like, how many touchdowns was Derek Sluka right there for as well, where you had a DB in perfect coverage, Sluka like a foot away, closing in fast, and yet somehow the Hamilton receiver, usually Kenny Lawler, would come away with the football. It was mind-blowing.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened all season. I wish it were just this game. It's just, all season they have. I don't even know how many times they've won a 50-50 ball. Maybe once, twice.
It feels like
they just, all these deep passes down the rail. I mean, look, it's clearly a problem. Teams have identified it. Like, you just, honestly, it's like high school football. You just send a dude on a 9 down the rail and throw him the ball. and it's a touchdown. And
Yeah.
I don't know whether you need to get more, you have to get somebody deeper, or you gotta shade the safety over top of Lawler to take that away. And maybe like that's a problem because the run defense can't stand up if you have that, but they're clearly going to need help. Like they're not going to be able to cover that fly down the rail, over and over again. It just was crushing them. And I don't know whether they have to get more depth and, just accept that maybe guys are going to cut that off and, back shoulder it or cut it underneath and just live with that. But, defensive backs are in the touchdown business, right? Like you can't allow touchdowns. Like you can, guys are going to catch balls, but you just can't give up touchdowns at the rate they were doing tonight. It just was a backbreaker because full credit, the offense played really well. Like, I've been tough on Arbuckle and he was very good tonight. Like as a backup quarterback, you certainly could not ask for any more. I mean, I know he threw that pick at the beginning, which was a bit of a backbreaker. But I mean, he moved the ball effectively. They scored well. I mean, that's all you can ask from your backup quarterback. And the defense just could not get off the field. I mean, the defense absolutely has to wear this loss and more specifically, like the secondary. They're just not turning over balls. There's not a lot of physicality. I mean, you could really tell the difference between Hamilton and Toronto in terms of the physicality of contact. It just isn't there. They don't have somebody in the secondary who like we used to have Chris Edwards. Like they don't have somebody who is just going to lay somebody out and kind of give that secondary bit of swagger. They are swagger free at the moment, and they're playing like it.
The concern on that topic is that there's nobody coming back from injury from the DBs. The DB is that's the healthy unit, right? You've got every other positional group pretty much who's missing a guy. I guess the receivers are pretty healthy too, but everybody else is missing a guy who's coming back. Like Wynton McManus coming back for the linebackers. Chad Kelly's obviously coming back from the quarterback standpoint. You've got a number of defensive linemen out who are coming back. You've got Darius Araujo on the offensive line, who at some point should be healthy in the season. Running backs, you name it. There are people coming back, special teams, a couple huge contributors who will be coming back. But yeah, the DBs don't have that. Now, the reason, so I'd say, maybe, that's a concern because there's no one coming through the door with who's going to suddenly play corner or halfback, safety, whatever. But I don't, it's just hard to pinpoint bad play. It's not bad play. Like you're saying, and this is the frustrating part. I think the DBs are playing well. It's just that little bit that it's
I mean,
je ne sais quoi.
They're not busting for sure. They're not busting, so that's good. Although I think that one of the Hamilton touchdowns looked like a bust, where Judge let the guy run the out and was expecting somebody to have that flat. But they're not busting much. But I mean, it's not great. Like they're not able to play man coverage on deep passes. It looks like they're triggering a step or two late in zone, and are letting guys catch the ball and then tackling them. The tackling is not elite. The physicality is not great. Like the underneath stuff, like, Hamilton punished the Argos when they threw that underneath stuff. They're like, you can catch this for 7 yards, but I'm going to make you feel it. And Toronto did not punish tonight. And so I think, like, from a defensive back point of view, I don't know who their leader is, to be honest. I don't know, like Amos obviously is a huge loss. I don't know who they rally around. We've always had different guys over the years who are tone setters in the defensive backfield, and I don't know who that would be right now.
I think Wynton McManus, even though he's not a defensive back, probably goes a long way towards setting a tone for the entire defense. I think that's I don't know if we can quantify how much he's missed. And to the extent where with all the free agents that left in the offseason, Winton was the one guy they were not going to let go. They knew that this is the most important piece on our team of all the potential free agents here. We can't let him walk out this door. And so I think from that standpoint, him being away, we really do see a trickle down effect, not necessarily from his play, although that's there too. He's one of the, if not the best defensive player in the CFL. But I think you do see it from that leadership standpoint, the tone setting standpoint. How many big hits and big plays has he made where the entire defense rallies around him? Because you look at guys like Tavares McFadden, Benji Franklin, Mark Milton, like these guys are all Grey Cup players. These are Grey Cup winners who are out there starting for the Toronto Argonauts last season. And it's not like they've lost it and they haven't forgotten how to play or how to hit or anything like that. Like it's there. It's just there's something missing. And I just have to think it's the leadership of Wendy McManus that is the difference right now for that defense.
Yeah, I mean, look, like they are able to rally together and put some decent plays out there, but what they're not good at really at all is getting off the field. And I thought the run defense was pretty stout. I mean, there were a couple of bad plays where they were really getting blown off the line, but they adjusted, and I thought on the whole the run defense was certainly good enough. Although they're definitely missing some beef on that line. They were definitely getting pushed around a little bit, but they just are not able to make that play on second down that you have to have. And like, there's just no swagger there. They're playing off, they're playing soft away, on the receivers and worried about a deep pass, and they're giving up that underneath first down. They're not jumping on balls. They're not coming up and trying to ball hawk. The running backs coming out of the backfield, uncovered, receivers are entering zones and are not being covered. You have to trigger. Like if a guy comes in your zone, you got to trigger that. It can't be watch him catch the ball. I just think there's no electricity, no energy to the defensive backfield right now. I hate to pile on, but I mean, they gave up like 900 yards and 12 touchdowns tonight. It was not, it was not great. That has to get better.
I thought we could have seen more from the defensive line. I think you talked about the interior. I didn't love the run stopping from the D tackles today. It looked like they needed one more guy in the rotation. Like that's what it looked like to me. They've a lot of the evening were getting pushed off the ball, and Hamilton backs were getting 3 or 4 yards before making contact. So that was a bit of a concern. And then the ends, who have been so good in the pass rush, especially Andrew Chatfield, they couldn't get home. Like sometimes they got picked up, but even when they didn't, even when they won, Bo Levi Mitchell was just so good at getting the ball out before contact got there. And that's what limited them. I think they ended up with 2 sacks on the evening, one of which Bo sort of gave them. He could see pressure coming through, and so he just went to ground to avoid taking a hit. And then the other one was a pretty nice cleanup from was that Casey, I think, that got the other sack?
I was going to say, like, in terms of bright spots, he's definitely one. I thought that he had that sack. He made a couple of nice plays. I thought he flashed a little tonight. Look, I thought LeBourne a couple times on the field, like you noticed him. Anytime you notice a guy, he looked overjoyed to be playing football.
He did.
He just looked like, yes, this is what I want to do. Look, I liked it. I liked his energy. I liked that he looked faster than other people on the field. So that's encouraging. Maybe he can be something because, you're a backup running back. Usually you don't notice it. And I noticed him. And Mittal. Look, Mittal's going to be a star.
Yeah.
If he's not already.
He's turning into one.
He is their, Coxie is their best wide receiver right now. But Mittal is right behind him.
Yeah. And before we get off LeBourne, let's just talk about him for a little bit. He he only had the one carry for 1 yard and a touchdown, but he had 4 receptions and made himself very visible on those. He's fast. Like, remember,
Yeah,
he was
he's fast.
he was the number one ranked prospect coming out of high school, number one ranked running back coming out of high school, all-purpose running back, and was generally viewed at Florida State. He actually spent 1 year with, he was at Florida State the same time as Tavares McFadden. They had one crossover year in 2017. That was his redshirt year. And then looked fantastic, but then got a knee injury. When he went to Marshall after that, for his last year, he went to Marshall. Every game he played in, he ran for over 100 yards, including 163 in an upset win over the 8th-ranked Notre Dame Fighting Irish. Like, he is a gifted running back. He ran a 4.4 at his pro day, benched 23 or 24 reps. He's got strength, he's got speed. He ran a 6.863 cone or something of that ilk. He's got all the measurables, and that desire to play that we saw from him tonight, I thought really stood out. And I was glad to see how many snaps he was getting down the stretch of that game there too.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think he's going to turn the team around or anything, but look, he definitely is a contributor. I mean, I think he's definitely somebody they can use in the backfield. You have to be happy about that. The fact that, that he looked, he looked the part. He caught my eye. So it wasn't just all garbage time either. Like, he can catch it out of the backfield, and he's got quicks, and he's not the biggest guy in the world, but. I think that's in terms of positives to take away, I mean, there definitely are some guys on this team, who are building blocks, and, maybe he can really flash for them.
Let's go through the offensive positional groups, because we didn't really get a chance to talk about the offense yet. We've been talking about the defense. They give up 51 points, or almost 51 points, 6 of the 7 touchdowns. Nick Arbuckle's play, I did think was good. You talked about that interception. That was such a crushing moment, because my one thing this week was get a 7-0 lead in the first half, and they did it on the first drive. Dinwiddie felt so confident in the offense today that he elected to take the ball after winning the coin toss, which he never does.
Yeah, which I loved it. I loved that call.
And the drive was perfectly scripted. Like, what an opening drive. The jet sweep to Mittal, the runs, the passes to Mittal downfield, the swing pass to Brissett. Like, it was a well-executed drive. It ends in a touchdown. And they went up 7-0, and you're like, man, this offense looks good tonight. And they got the ball back, and they're driving again. And the play designed that ended up being the interception, it was a beautifully designed play as a corner route from Ungerer matched up against Sean Amos, and they had Amos beat. He was gone 5 yards. Arbuckle rolled to his right. He was under pressure, and Ungerer hadn't looked back for the ball yet. Arbuckle had to release it a little bit early, and what quarterbacks often do there is they'll get height under the ball because they want to give the receiver time to locate it and make the catch. If that ball is on the money, that's a touchdown for Ungerer, or at the very least, a 50 or 60-yard gain. And Arbuckle was throwing into the wind. And when you throw it with that kind of arc, that height, the wind is going to bring it back. And it brought it back 1 yard too far. 1 yard further, that is a huge catch. 2 yards further, that is a touchdown potentially.
And look, it's a monster play by Amos.
Yeah, and Amos made the great play on it, and then had a big run back to the 35-yard line. The very next play, it's a 35-yard touchdown pass to Lawler, who caught it on his lap between the arms of Mark Milton. It was just everything, that two-play sequence.
Unfortunately,
yeah.
I mean, it's game changing, right? Like that old line that any football game can be boiled down to 5 plays, and that was one of the 5. Like if he catches that and runs it for a touchdown, I think it's a different game.
Yeah, 14-0 at that point.
I think it changes everything. But it was like they punched him in the face, and then they punched themselves in the face, and then it's like, well, that's not really how you like to follow up a punch in the face.
And we said all along, like with Nick Arbuckle, when you've got your backup quarterback, you need the defense to make plays and be a difference maker. You need special teams to make plays, be a difference maker. The defense lets up 6 touchdowns. Special teams gives up a touchdown. Now they got one of their own, but you want to be plus in that category, not even. And they had the offense. If you told me coming to this game, yeah, Toronto's going to score 38 points, I would have felt pretty confident this was a Toronto Argonauts win, wouldn't you?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I talked about how like 250 and a touchdown wasn't enough, and they were like, okay, fine, no bet. And, it just, they could not defend they could not defend the deep fly. It really is just as simple as that. Like, they weren't great at stopping the run. They were getting pushed around a little bit, and they could not stop the deep pass. And that ruined what should have been enough to win a football game. I mean, if you score 40 at home or 38 or wherever they score, like that should be a win every time. Like I don't think anybody expects, a defense to give up, 43 points or 50 points, depending on how you want to fill your scorecard in on it.
Nick Arbuckle, 27 of 38 for 339 yards, 2 touchdowns, 1 interception. Some of that yardage is garbage time. I'd say the last drive, maybe even 2 drives, but he played well. I thought he played well. That 1 interception, like I said, it's backbreaking. It's such a small mistake, and it's not a bad decision. The decision was correct. He just threw the ball too high. That could have been a whole different ballgame. But I do think Arbuckle played well. I think this might have been was this his best game? Like he keeps getting better every week.
He played really well. I mean, he played well enough to win. I mean, you can't ask anything more of your backup. I mean, he threw for over 300 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Were you surprised we didn't see Jared Dagey or Tucker Horn at the end on that last drive?
No, I don't know. Look, I think that, it's Arbuckle's team and they're going to roll with Arbuckle. And, I don't think anything comes of, suppose he comes in and he gets that garbage time touchdown that Arbuckle got. And then it's like, it's not worth the headache.
Yeah, no, probably true. And I think you're also playing point differential in a loss like this. I think that's why Coach did what he called the timeout and punted late in the game. I thought they were going to go for it. It was a little under 6 minutes left. It was 3rd down and it was going to be about 7 or 8. But just with the time and the score, they're down 3 touchdowns. I thought, okay, they're going to go for sure. And when they called the timeout, I thought, well, yeah, they're definitely going for this. But no, they punted it away. And I think the thought there was differential. And maybe you just want to leave Arbuckle in as the guy that's going to get you closer. And he did. He brought them back within another touchdown. The running backs, Kevin Brown, 8 carries, 22 yards and a touchdown. Arbuckle ran twice for 10 yards. Brissett with 1 that was called a rush, but it was a swing pass on sort of jet motion that ended up being more of a lateral, so that counts as a rush. And then LeBourne with that 1-yard plunge for his 1-yard touchdown. What's sad about, look at those backs. LeBourne played well. Kevin Brown, his best game, I think, certainly as a special teamer.
He had some really nice runs, he hit the hole hard. Got through. Like the touchdown was a great touchdown.
Yeah.
He played again, like everything you could hope for, from essentially a deep on the depth chart back. I thought he gave them what you wanted. I can't really, I mean, any offense is going to make mistakes and drop balls and this and that. But tonight is solely on the defense. I mean, obviously there was some special teams errors, but they scored a touchdown to make up for their other screw up. I mean, obviously, like allowing kick return touchdowns is a problem, and they need to try and fix that. But
some long returns too.
Yeah, the defense just has to be, just has to try and find a way to get off the field. The magic of BMO has left this team.
Before we get into that and the 3 straight losses at home that the Argos have started the season with, I do think it's worth mentioning that it's quite possible that despite this being a good game from Kevin Brown and a really interesting game from Kalen LeBourne, who showed some flashes, both these guys might not dress next game. The Argos are going to a bye week. I think there's a really good chance Williams is back after that. And I also think McMahon might be back after that. So this might be the last we see of Brown and LeBourne for a little while, which is a shame because I think they both came out of a decent game tonight. Let's just transition to the receivers while we're going sort of down the stats. Mitchell, you talked about his night. What a night again from him, who did a little bit of everything, caught some tough passes over the middle. He had a really nice jet sweep, blocked really well for some of his other guys too. Just a good route runner who can do it all. 9 targets, 8 receptions, 104 yards and a touchdown. The first Toronto receiver over 100 yards this season. In the first 4 games, they had a guy with 99, 98, 98 again in 96, and they finally break that 100-yard mark, 104 for Mitchell. Coxie, 5 catches on 8 targets, 76 yards and a touchdown. I thought both those guys played really well. Tavares had a couple key catches in there too, especially early. It's just the one catch missing on that stat line was that Unger throw early in the game where he couldn't come away with it, and Amos did instead. Let's talk about that losing streak here. I know this has got to be tough for Coach Dinwiddie. He knows the importance of playing well at home and winning at home, and it's been something that his teams have done no matter who's starting at quarterback, no matter which season we're talking about. In the Ryan Dinwiddie era, he has never had a team score over 50 points on him. He's never lost 3 consecutive home games. Losing at home just hasn't happened in the Coach Dinwiddie era. And so this has got to be tough with him. And, we're recording this while the post-game press conferences are going on. I don't expect though that we'll have, I could be wrong by the time we finish recording. I could find this wrong.
I don't know. There were definitely some concerns in the press box about what was coming.
I don't see it like that. I imagine Coach Dinwiddie would probably be measured in this. I think, the explosion 2 weeks ago was correct. And I think that it needed to happen. And I think in large part, that's why the Argos gave the response they did last week. Today, I felt like they were outgunned. They're just missing too many guys and it's caught up to them. That's more what it looked like to me tonight than anything else. And I'm not sure that's something you yell at and so forth. And I think he knows that.
I think that's the reality is, people go, it's an excuse. Well, there are reasons and there are excuses. If you're like, well, my house burned down, that's why I was late. Well, that's a reason, not an excuse. And the team was already a little depleted from free agency. So it was already going to be not a rebuilding year, but it was already going to be a bit of a challenge. That happens. You win the championship, you lose guys to other teams. It's very difficult to win 2 in a row. So there was a talent drain. And so that off the bat was going to be tough. And then when you take away 9 starters, there's just no team that can survive that. It makes it tough because so they're just going to lose and there's nothing we can say. But yeah, you can still get frustrated, but it's very difficult to get too worked up over a team that is missing so many key players. That next man up stuff is not true. That's just something coaches say. If that were true, everybody would be making $200,000. The next man up is not as good as the guy who went down, and often really not as good. And so, not to put too fine a point on it, but you got to have your horses, and they just don't right now. So they're really struggling because they just can't compete at the level that they want to compete at. With the players missing that they have.
The good news is that reinforcements are coming. This is something we've been talking about for a few weeks now. This would feel pretty desperate if this was the team, right? That's where there's a divide here. And that's where I would encourage you as a Toronto Argonauts fan not to be too down about what you're seeing right now. There's some really positive signs. I know it sounds terrible to say you just let up 51 points and 7 touchdowns, and I'm talking about positivity, but it's true. This team is about to get a bunch of highly important players back, players who are among the best in the CFL at their positional group. They're coming back. This is Hamilton's team. The team you saw tonight from Hamilton, this is basically their team. This is what they're going forward with. And, every team suffers injuries, and that's why I don't like to talk about it too much, but it's been an overwhelming amount. And quarterback alone is one thing that has been a difference maker. You look at playoff teams over the last however many years you want to look back, it's very rare to find teams that use their backup quarterback for a long period of time.
Look at Montreal. I mean, you're just going to see without their starting quarterback, they're a different team. And that's just one, that's not 7 guys out. That's just the impact of not having your starting quarterback. They have immediately come back to the pack.
And you can go further than that. BC lose their starting quarterback, and
right.
they get
can't
hammered.
Beat anybody.
Ottawa lose their starting quarterback, and they look terrible. Go around the league, and that's the same situation. Montreal looked like they could beat anybody, and then they lose their quarterback going to Hamilton and get their hats handed to them. You cannot in this league expect to look the exact same without your starting quarterback. But again, those problems hopefully are coming to an end. The Argos go into a bye now, and then you're hoping Chad Kelly can come back. I think it's getting there. Like, Chad Kelly no longer has a limp in his walk. It was noticeable the last time the teams played here at BMO Field. He was walking along the sidelines. You could see traces of a limp, but it's not there anymore at practice. It's not there on the sideline. I think he's getting very close to being able to play. At this moment in time, I expect him to play in Montreal in 2 weeks' time, and I expect Wyndham McManus and Williams and Mac Mahan to be there too. And this team starts looking like the team that it's supposed to be. Before we sign off, go on, JB.
And if they lose that game, then we can really unleash, some vitriol. But for now, look, the coaches can't say it because, of course, you can't as an organization be like, well, we're not that good right now, so we're probably not going to win many games. So we have to say it. It's tough. It's tough on the attendance, right? Like, tonight was not an ideal turnout. It's tough. It's a hard thing for a franchise to carry. But luckily the season is very long, and it certainly tonight makes Labor Day spicier. Hamilton's timeout with 10 seconds left. I guarantee you is burning a hole in Dinwiddie's brain at the moment. So we'll pick ourselves. They'll pick themselves up and see what's what when both teams have their full roster.
It's not just the timeout. Like, during the timeout, they call the timeout. Bo Levi Mitchell looks at the Toronto bench and starts walking towards them. He did that a few times. He was chirping on the sideline. He came all the way to midfield, chirping at the Toronto bench. He was fired up. I don't know what occurred. I don't know what was said, but Hamilton seemed to really have Toronto in their heads. Lawler, after scoring the touchdown, the first thing he did, it wasn't go and high five his teammates. It was start chirping the Toronto bench. And maybe it's all the talk of Hamilton hasn't won a Grey Cup this century, or maybe it's the talk about how, Toronto's been doing nothing but winning Grey Cups while Hamilton's been struggling as of late. I don't know if that's it, if there's something else, or things were said on the field or pregame or whatever. Or maybe it's just, a team trying to fire themselves up about a great rivalry, one of the best rivalries in pro sports. I don't know what it is, but you're right. The Labor Day game is going to be awesome. I can't wait for it. This defense, I think, is going to look very different on Labor Day. You don't get 51 points hung up on you by your biggest rival and then go into the next matchup with them without carrying a little something with you. They will be intense and fired up. So of all the games remaining this season, I think the Labor Day Classic is the one I'm most looking forward to. I think that one is shaping up to be an intense affair. But before we get to that, JB, we've got a bye week to head into. We will do our bye week podcast midweek as we get you set for the next week in CFL action and kind of go through all of our usual bye week stuff and reassess and kind of look at this first sort of third of the season as we're pretty much there. And talk about some of the good, the bad, and so on, and what's expected as the team heads out of the bye into their next game. The next game is at Montreal, Thursday, July 17th. It's at Montreal, 7:30 start. And will we see Chad Kelly? Will we see Wynton McManus? We'll have to wait and see. The final score here from BMO Field, Ticats 51, Toronto Argonauts 38. For JB, this is Ben Grant saying so long, and may all your pre-snap reads be good ones. I'll see ya.
Go, Toronto Argos, go, go, go. Pull together, fight the foe.